Simon. Hi, my name's Llwyn Gronwy from Llwyn Gronwy, Llarwst in the Conwy Valley. We're a family farm. We've been milking here since I can remember, but back in 2012 we decided to go spring calving from a high-yielding Holstein herd, and since then we've been breeding with LAC, and we've been increasing cows every year since. We were at the beginning we were milking 150 Holsteins, but now we are milking 320 crossbreds and Friesians. And because we've been increasing cow numbers since 2012, there was no need really to milk record, because we were concentrating on getting the numbers up and fertility to get the block as tight as we can. We've reached those goals now. We're currently milking 320. Our stock rate is 3 cows to the hectare, which is fairly high. But my end goal was to begin with was to get a 550 kilo cow and milking 550 solids really. That's what our goal was. So because we had the numbers now, it was time to go more technical in our breeding and more pinpoint, more which bulls you can give to which cows. So it's really, that's why we started as a milk record. So that's why Farming Connect came on board, and then we did the project last year and they found it very beneficial. So we know now where we're heading in the next few years, and hopefully to end reach our end goal to have a more equal cow across the herd, probably, and performing as well as we can. So yeah, that's where we are at the moment. So hopefully, if you've got any questions, I'll happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Llwyn. Thank you for your introduction to your farm and how the project has worked for you. I shall now hand over to Sean Chubb, LIC, Profit Pasture Manager, and he will explain more about the outcome of the project, and he will be followed by Richard Francis, LIC Solutions Manager for North Wales, who will then talk about selecting bull choice at Llwyn Gronwy. So we aim to discuss selecting cows for breeding based on performance, ranking cows at Llwyn Gronwy on kilograms milk solids per kilogram of live weight. Are heavier cows or lighter cows more efficient? So if I can now hand over to you, Richard, Sean, and ask you to share your screen with our audience, I'd be grateful.
All right, thanks a lot, Simon. I'm Sean Chubb, a pasture profit consultant in the Midlands of Wales, and so I've taken on all the milk recording results from Llwyn's farm there and gone through it. I have looked at so I want to start off by asking you which one of these is the better cows. Without having any information, we're all going to start resorting back to our own perceived conceptions of what makes a good cow or a profitable cow. So it could be, needs a wide chest, wide hips, deep body, and so forth. But without actually having any physical data on them, we don't actually know which one is better. Llwyn would actually be in a better position to say, just by looking at these two cows, he'd probably know if one kicks him more, one's more prone to mastitis or milk fever or things like that, which would be able to help him drive his decisions around breeding and culling. But if they're sort of ghosts within herd in terms of they just get on and do their day-to-day milkings and don't really stand out in the herd, it's going to be very difficult to be able to pinpoint one for, say, selective breeding or for culling purposes. So that's where the benefit of milk recording comes in. So what are we actually looking for in an ideal cow? So this is my viewpoint. Well, she needs to be more than 222 days of milk. So that's with, so therefore if it's a 12-week mating block, she's going to at least be milking for, she's going to be calving at the end of that time period and milking through the rest of the year. She needs to be milked for less than 305 days. So that means that she's still managing to calve within the same time period throughout the year. She needs to have a low Semitic cell count. So obviously we don't want to be penalised there. kg to live weight, obviously we're wanting an efficient cow, so having more milk solids than live weight's good. She needs to have good health traits, so therefore she's not costing us money in medication, and also we're not losing days in milk through treatments. Being a grass-based farm, she needs to have good mobility to walk to and from the parlour, and obviously she needs to be fertile for longevity within the herd. So when we combine all these attributes together, hopefully we're going to end up with a good profitable cow that will give us good profitable daughters going forward. So when I was looking at the data that was provided by Llwyn, I looked at sort of 3 different options how you can rank the cows. And the first one was just looking at ranking the cows on solely their milk solids alone. The second option was looking at the cows on a milk solids to live weight basis. And the third option was actually putting a value on the milk that the cow's actually producing, and then ranking that on a live weight basis. So we're actually trying to get a more of a rounded basis of which cow is producing more profitable milk. So if we actually start going into it, and we look at the first option, which is just solely on milk solids. So here are the top 5 producing cows within the herd in terms of milk solids. And you actually see that the top 5 is dominated by the 4th year lactation cows, which isn't out of the ordinary, where they're sort of at their peak production. You can see the number 3 ranked cow, number 342, is actually a 2nd lactation cow. So she's actually prime position to become one of the highest producing cows going forward. And this actually highlights something that about a downfall for actually this side of looking at cow production, is that your 1st and 2nd lactation cows are actually going to be highly disadvantaged through this means of ranking your cows, whereas your 1st lactation cows are at about 88% of their peak production, which they will hit in year 3 and 4, and year 2 lactation cows are at about 95 of what they will do in year 3 and 4. So ranking cows on just milk solids alone, you're actually hindering your probably what are going to be your best genetics, just simply because they're not at their peak production. So you could actually be making some ill-advised breeding and culling decisions off the back of that. So if we look at actually the distribution of the cows, we see that the top 25% of the cows are producing over 500 kgs of milk solid, with the bottom 25 is averaging at 330 kgs of milk solids, with a variation of about 179 kgs of milk solids, which is fairly standard across most herds. Average milk solid for the cow for the herd is 419. Now, if we were to use this information, yes, it's easy to get. We don't need to do anything more with it, and it's fast to just get it and start making decisions from. Another added benefit of it is that anything that's down in the bottom 25% of the herd, generally they're not going to be able to. There's just not enough volume there to lift the value of that milk for them to get up to the top 25% of the herd. So if we're going to proportion that side of the herd to beef or for culling, we're probably not going to be missing out on too much there. But if there's some heifers in there, we might be actually culling a heifer which could still progress further up that further up the chain in the herd, instead of culling out an older cow which is now decreasing in her production. So we could be missing out a little bit there. So yeah, as I said before, the main disadvantages for doing this is we're disadvantaging the younger cows in the herds. It actually doesn't take into account feed requirements. So if we look at the number 1 producing cow, which is doing close to 800 milk solids, she could be close to 800 kgs, which she's not, but if she was, just for argument's sake, she's going to have a higher feed requirement. So as she managed to get that feed or that level of production because she's pulling her feed at the feed trough, or is she being a lazy grazer and only grazing the 2nd and 3rd leaf, so therefore being able to attain a higher energy and dry matter intake. So these things need to be taken into account as well. Also, we don't actually know if that cow that's up number 1 is actually the most profitable cow, so we could actually be breeding from cows that aren't actually the most profitable. So that's why, we need to be looking a little bit further into it. So this takes us on to option 2, which is we start adding in live weights. So we can see got the old rankings on the left, and then if we come in one, we've got the new rankings. So we see a bit of a rejig in the cows' worth, or how we rate them within the herd. So we start to see lactation 1 and 2 cows come into the top 5, which is good to see, which shows that the young stock coming through are actually being, they are a superior genetic cow than what has been bred before, through that that they're holding their own against the older cows. But again, we're not actually looking at the full picture here if we're going to go solely on this, because we can see here that there's 2 cows which have rather high average somatic cell counts, and then one which is on borderline as well. So we've only got 2 cows in the top 5 whose somatic cell counts would be good to go forward. So we actually need to look at these other ones going forward, which is a downside of just looking at the efficiency of the cow. So if we actually look at the distribution of the cows, we can start to see fairly similar to the distribution of the actual milk solids, with your better cows being producing well over their body weight in milk solids, with the lower cows right down the end, nowhere near that. So if we actually look at the distribution of the live weights within the herd, the average weight of the herd is 225 kgs, with the heaviest cow being 700 and the lightest cow being 382 kg. Now, when we split them out into their quartiles, the top 25% of the herd is actually a lot lighter, which is generally the case when you solely look on live weight to as it's much easier for a lighter cow to produce more milk solids off grass than her body weight than, say, a bigger cow. So yeah, it's not surprising that the bottom and top quartiles are separated down to the top and bottom of the weight categories of the cows. So the pros and cons of looking at this is it's still relatively easy to do. All we need to do is get the weights and then work from there, so that's not too hard. We're actually creating parity amongst all the age classes within the herd. So again, that's a bonus within that. And we're actually starting to be able to target an ideal weight for the farm or the type of system that you're running. But the disadvantages is, one, we're actually disadvantaging some of those high producing cows that aren't actually producing over their live weight. So if we've got a cow that's producing, let's say 600 kgs of milk solids, but she's 620 kgs. Yes, she's heavier than she is producing milk solids, but we're actually getting a lot of volume out of her, and she would actually be making some pretty good money. Whereas a cow that's, say, 400 kgs producing 420, yes, she's more efficient, but are we actually getting that value out of her as we are with that heavier cow? So we're not actually getting a bit of a parity on that. So that's when we need to do a bit more work on it. So yeah, it's a good starting point and definitely is well worth progressing from there. But once you got to this point, it's about actually putting some figures around those milk solids values to actually drive the bit more better selective breeding from there. So if we move on to the third option, which is actually looking at the whole level of the herd. So I'll just talk about how I actually split out these cows. So we split the cows into 3 groups. The first being the cows in lactation 3 to 8. So we're trying to put cows into the same sort of groups as what they are, so we can compare them much better. The second group is lactation 1 to 2. Then the third group is cows that have either been milked for longer than 305 days or less than 220 days, or have had less than 4 milk recordings. The reason why we've done this is because these cows need a little bit more scrutiny over, because if she's gone over 305 days, is that because she's slipping back in the calving pattern? Or if she's under 220 days, is that because she's now out of the block, or what? So we actually need to look at those cows to a little bit closer, because some things can be a little bit off there. And then it needs to have 4 recordings. So the number of recordings you do increases the accuracy of the results. So if I remember rightly, about 4 recordings a year puts you at about 88 to 90% accuracy within the herd, and going over that, you don't actually increase it too much more, but coming below 4, you're down in the low 70s or high 60% of accuracy. So again, having less than 4 recordings will impact on your total result. And what we're looking at is the 365-day average. So we're comparing all the cows on an even basis. So again, that's why we need to highlight the cows that are less than 225 days, as they will actually be given a 305-day milk recording average, which it gets extrapolated out working on the milk recordings. So once I've done all that, what we've done is we've added some value for fat and protein, and we've taken some value away for somatic cell count and litres. So the reason why we've taken away value for litres is because we actually want to promote cows with high milk solids. So if we've or high percentage of milk solids in their fat in their milk. So if we've got 2 cows that are producing, say, 500 kgs of milk solid, but one's doing it off 6,000 litres and one's doing it off 5,500 litres, the cow that's doing it off 5,500 litres is actually a more profitable cow under the scenario that I've put together here. And then we've deducted some efficiencies for milk solid production. So that, again, is looking at your life weight. So if we go forward, we can see that everything's been rejigged around again. And so, the number 1 ranked cow there now, she's been quite highly ranked throughout the last 2. So, that shows that those 2 other ranking systems are fairly good, but we can see that if we go down to the number 5 ranking under the new rankings, she was ranked 42nd before that and 19th before that. The number 4 most profitable cow was 62nd ranked under the efficiencies. So, only 2 cows out of the top 5 here actually produce more milk solids than they are heavy or their weight. So that's where I was sort of saying before that just because they're efficient doesn't actually mean that they're more profitable. So you can see that there's only 1 cow there that has a somatic cell count red flag there, being that she's been over the limit once and she's over 200 average somatic cell count. So again, she's been deducted for it, but because of her value of her milk, she's still been promoted up quite high, and therefore she's got the 2nd ranking. If we move on to the group number 2, which is the 1st and 2nd lactation cows, again, 2nd lactation cows are dominating this group because their milk solid production is going to be higher than the 1st or lactation 1 cows. So again, we'll ideally split these out into 2 groups, but just for this example, I've kept them all in 1, so therefore there's no lactation 1 cows showing. And yeah, again, we're seeing that there's a varying range of where cows were sitting in their rankings beforehand. If we look at that first number 1 cow ranking, she was 61st in the ranking beforehand on just efficiency alone, and ranked 6th before that. So when we actually start adding in value, we start to see these cows move around a lot more as we start to see which cows are actually more profitable for the milk contract that they're under. And then finally, we've got the group 3 cows, which are the ones who did not meet the criteria. So all the cows in here were actually over 305 days, but without actually knowing the herd, I'm going to say that all these cows will be fit to go back into their respective groups because they were only a day or 2 over, and that could be down to management decisions of dry off cows on this date. So therefore they've gone 1 or 2 days over, so it's not actually an issue. And we can see that there's only 1 cow with going over the somatic cell limit, but they've all got pretty good averages. So they're all good cows to go into their respective groups and should be looked at for mating purposes going forward. So how does this look on a distribution? So now we're actually starting to see the distribution, not in a nice even flow. It's starting to bounce all over the place. So the reason for this is because we've actually given a higher value proportion to protein than we have fats. So again, if we got 2 cows producing the same level of milk solids, the cow with more protein is actually going to have a higher value or higher profitability for her milk. So she's going to get promoted up the herd than, say, a cow with more fat. So that's how you can see some of those cows which are over 500 kgs of milk solid starting to move towards the middle of the herd in terms of their ranking of profitability. Or she might have a somatic cell count issue, or she could be a rather heavy cow. All these factors are being played into this factor of where they're going to sit overall. So if we move on to actually where the weight distribution is now we've actually put a bit more value onto the milk. We start to see that the weights are starting to come back a lot closer to the average weight of the herd. So, which actually shows that what Llwyn and Richard have been doing in the past in terms of their breeding selection has actually been working and is fairly spot on. And if I was to recommend going forward, it'd just be to keep doing what they're doing and just look at that bottom 25%. Obviously that 700 kg cow has been in the bottom 25 in the last 2 scenarios. So she's obviously shown that she's not that efficient under the system that they're running. So she should be earmarked for either a smaller cow or beef. Just to sort of stop her from passing on the inefficiencies to the next generations. Looking at this sort of system, there are some pros and cons to it. The pros is that we can really target the cows that we want to, say, put sex semen on to get to dry performance, the cows that we want to put beef on, and then cows that we want to keep replacements from. We can actually really drive that. So that side of things is really good, and it actually gives us a target of if we do want to have a certain size cow, which ones of these cows within the herd are meeting the requirements of the weight and the production. So therefore, we can actually go back through the breeding records and say, well, okay, which bull did we use to get this cow? How did we get here? And so we can emulate that going forward. The downside for this system is actually takes a fair bit to put together. If you're not that efficient with Excel, you're probably going to struggle to put something together. So therefore, you're probably going to need to contact someone else who's got a system in place to evaluate cows to be able to get this information. It's other than that, it'd be the way I'd be recommending going forward. Now we've got all this information, we actually need to relay this on to our AI and getting the cows in calf. So how do we set up a system to ensure that we do have all the cows getting in calf to the bulls that we want them to? So I'd start off by speaking to my AI tech if you're not doing it yourself. So therefore you can formulate a plan that will get the right semen in the right cow. This could be something as simple as putting tail tape around the tails. So it could be a red tail tape for let's say beef, blue tail tape for a smaller bull to go on the bigger cows, and then a yellow tail tape for a different bull for the cows that are of the right size. Or you could use whiteboard and paper and symbols. So it could be simple as you write on a whiteboard, X cows get this bull, and there's 6 of them. So therefore, when the AI tech's going out, he knows from the flask, all right, I need to get 6 of these bulls out, 4 of that, 2 of beef, and away he can go. And then every cow that's, say, got an X or a dot or a circle gets the right semen. It doesn't have to be flash. It's just as long as the AI tech knows which bull to put in which cow. Therefore, we can get the results we want. So in conclusion, being able to milk record enables us to compare cows more evenly, and we can actually highlight the cows that are taking a free ride. So therefore, we're not breeding from them. So therefore, we can actually target our mating a lot better. We can actually provide an ideal live weight for the farm or the system that we're running. and we can actually find the discretionary cows in the herd. So therefore, we're not cowing out actually a profitable cow when we actually think she's not unprofitable, and hopefully we'll get faster herd improvement as we are breeding from the better cows and we are cowing out from the bottom. And again, speak to your AI tech to organise the system so yeah, you'll perform when you're doing your selective breeding. So yeah, that's me. I'll stop sharing and I'll pass over to Richard.
Hiya, yeah. I'm Richard Francis. I'm a LIC area manager for North Wales and the borders. Yeah, we've been dealing with Elgan and his family for quite a few years now. When we first started dealing with them, there was quite a mix of cows, because there was quite some fairly biggish black and whites, and then he'd also bought some smaller crossbreds. We went in and yeah, we tried to pick bulls to bring the weights together. Yeah, the bigger cows would either have Jersey or crossbred, and the smaller cows would have Frisian. And yeah, we were aiming probably for a 550 kilo animal overall. The breeding selection, it was always based on, first of all, milk and milk solids. It had to be positive milk. Milk solids, I've just been looking back on some of the bulls we've used, and it's between 30 and 40 kilograms of improvement in either fat or protein as we've been going along. We've also tried to pick management traits. If you've got a cow with bad temperament or slow milking, etc., they won't stay in the herd. So they've always had to be positive traits. The linear traits, we've tried to maintain feet and udders. We wanted really strong udders. And fertility was a key as well. Yeah, so as the first couple of years, we were probably using a few Jerseys, a few crossbreds, and a bit of Frisian. And then the last year, we've gone more black and whites and crossbred. In 2018, you know, we had Power, Desi, Buster, and Shrimpton Hills beef. Desi was the Jersey with really good udders and plenty of solids. Buster was a black and white, and Power was a crossbred. We started using Shrimpton Hills beef. He's a short gestation Hereford bull. He's probably 9 days earlier than a conventional Hereford bull. So it enabled us to pick cows when they're serving dairy to you know, if you had something that was a bit poorer cow, they could go to Shrimpton Hills and be calving at the same time. We've used in 17 and 18, we've used the same team of bulls, and 19 and 20 we've used another team of bulls. This is to try and enable going forward, we can constantly use the best bulls without infringing on inbreeding. The 19 and 20 bulls, Gauntlet and Cairo, were two really good black and white bulls, plenty of solids, good linear traits, and really good fertility. Sierra was a crossbred. He was favouring more black and white, and then we put a proportion of the herd to Shrimpton Hill again. Looking forward, yeah, I've spoken with Elgan, and we're looking similar type of breeding. Looking for something with plenty of solids, good fertility, good conformation and linear traits, and good management traits. I've had a quick look at Lancelot. He was the #1 bull recently in New Zealand, and he had 38 and 40 kilos of fat and protein respectively. So we're constantly pushing up milk solids on the smaller cows with a bull like Lancelot. His capacity and his stature is positive, so the smaller cows should increase in weight. The Revenge, he's a really good crossbred bull. It'd be 5.2 fat and getting on 4% protein. Again, good udders and fertility, etc. We do use the BW Breedworth system from New Zealand, and overall this part of the BW system is that they want to maintain body size but increase efficiency. So yeah, so we've followed that through in what we're breeding at the moment. Yeah, I think that's I don't know if anybody's got any questions or. I think you're on mute, Simon.
Apologies. Sorry about that. Thank you, Sean and Richard, for the very informative and comprehensive presentations. I think we can now take any questions from the floor, as we'd say. So if there are any questions, perhaps Rhys, you can introduce the questions to our panelists. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so there are just a couple of questions so far. If anybody who's watching tonight, if they want to type in, there's a box at the bottom, a Q&A box. So just type in your question. A question to Elgan: do you use the Yoni's testing with your milk recording, with your grazing 4 milk recording?
Yeah, we did record all the Yoni's last autumn, and because we with Arla, there was a requirement this year. We came back, I think there was only 3 of those indicated high, so we indicated them and marked them, so we didn't use the colostrum at all.
Okay, very good. And then another question. Of the cows who ended up top of your list, Elgan, I'm guessing this is for you as well. What were they? Were they crossbreds, Irish Frisian, New Zealand Frisian? What sort of background were they?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's quite funny. They were all across the board. There wasn't any typical cow that came out on top. We had the big Frisians, the middle of the crossbreds, and some of the Jerseys were coming out. So they didn't answer the question for us, which cow would stand out. But preferably for me, personally, I'd like to look at a black and white cow. Yeah, so there was no really one type of cow that stood out. So no, it was quite surprising, really.
There you go. Good. And then a question, I think this is for Sean. If you are breeding to be profitable for your milk contract, how do you protect against changes to the contract?
Yeah, so as long as you're keeping good fats and good proteins, no matter which way your contract goes, you'll be hedging your bets both ways. So if you're on a cheese contract and proteins are better, you still don't want to lose all your fats. So that's how you'd sort of mitigate that. And we're looking for a profitable cow. So yes, we are looking at your contract, so we can change in factors for that. But yeah, you shouldn't go too wrong, no matter which way you go for what contract you're looking at, because yeah, if you're looking for a bull for good solids or good protein, they're generally going to have relatively good fat as well. So yeah, you shouldn't be too wrong.
Okay, and I got one question here. I think this is probably for Sean or Richard. Would you take into account the heterosis value on first crosses? And if so, would you deduct this value and by how much from their weights of solids to body weight? Would you take into account the heterosis value on first crosses? So I'm guessing Jersey on a Frisian. And if so, would you deduct this value and by how much from their weights of solids to body weight? How much, I'm guessing, how much value do you put on, or how much influence heterosis has yeah, on breeding?
I think it does have a value, but I don't know whether you can take the other one out of it. At the end of the day, you're talking genetic merit, and you want to improve genetic merit, and heterosis will put something on that. So, yeah, it's a difficult one to answer, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay.
Just looking at like from what I was looking at, that had already been taken into account. So we're looking at the value of the milk that the cow's producing. So if she has heterosis or not, we're still looking at the value of the milk. So yeah, you'd possibly look at the breeding records behind the cow if you wanted to see. So if your best cow is, say, a Frisian, a full Frisian cross with a full Jersey, and that's what all your top 10, top 20, top 25, top 50 cows all have that, then you can say, yes, well, I want to continue with that. But by the sounds of it, Llwyn didn't see that in his results there. So again, we're just looking at the profitability of the cow.
Okay. There's another question here for Llwyn. The calf value on the milk contract, would this affect Llwyn's bull decision, and also are using sex semen?
Yes, we haven't used sex semen this year. I'm just wary, being the block's so tight at the moment with cows standing. I don't know what's the general feel about the sex semen standing to. And coming back to the calf value, probably will affect my decision going probably more towards the black and white cow to have the bit of value on the bull calf as well, maybe. It makes the decision easier to if we've got a black white calf on the ground more than a Jersey.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, those are, unless there's any last minute questions now typed in, those are all the questions I've had so far.